Welcome to the Behind the Business Unfiltered podcast, where identity, purpose, and business align. My name is Christina.
And my name is Jessica. And in this episode, we're going to talk about what it really looks like to pivot in your business.
Jessica, I know that you actually started making a huge pivot in your business. When did you start feeling like things were like off for you?
So I think where things started feeling off and just not right was when I started feeling like I was no longer enjoying what I was doing.
Mm.
And when I first started this business, I started as a VA, and I just now recently had heard that we don't go into business as a VA to stay a VA. Like, it's usually a lead into something. Well, I have had this business since 2021. I have been a VA, an EA, operations manager, and realizing that I'm building skills, I'm building experience, I'm building the know-how, but then I start realizing I'm doing a lot more than I felt like I was really getting back, I guess, like the um getting paid for what you're worth, getting, just feeling that reward of what you're doing. I lost that. I started to get that overwhelmed, burnt out feeling, right?
Yeah.
And I started when I realized maybe that burnout feeling wasn't really burning out from doing so much work as much as it was not doing something that I enjoyed anymore, or not doing what I feel like I should be doing, like not being able to pick that lane
Hmm.
where I just grow with that, right? And
Yeah.
um and I feel like we as a VA, we're just kind of we become that, just, oh, you can do this, so you can do that, and you start doing those things um absentmindedly, right? And so then
Yeah.
that's where this burnout goes. I mean,
Yeah.
did you also have that kind of same thing?
Yeah, I think about like because we both started with the same program, to
Right,
get us into that work from home lifestyle, right? And
right,
so it was, just pick some things that and, that you feel like you could do or learn. And, or if you don't know, just give a list of some things that you could do, and just put yourself out there. And it's like that adrenaline rush of like, wow, the possibilities are endless, and then you feel like, oh, I can do that. And then when you're looking for the jobs, right, especially being fresh, you're like, look, I will do whatever the thing
yep,
is so that I can get booked, right? Because you're like, all you need is just you figure out how many clients you need. Like, I just need four to make this much, or I need whatever to make this much, and I'm just going to, do whatever they say I need to do, like it out of my list, do so that I can reach that goal, right?
right,
But I do think, yeah, it was that same thing, like where you start to realize that you are still in like that kind of 9 to 5 or kind of situation. Like you're getting paid hourly for your time, and now you have especially once you've got all those clients and you're booked, you don't have time anymore. What you got into the business for in the first place was for that time. And in the beginning, it seemed like, yeah, this is great. But after a while, I feel like it starts to wear on you. You know what I mean? Like you start to
yeah,
really see like, okay, is this really what I had originally signed up for? And then like like you said about being in business for so long, it's like, am I valued for what I'm providing now that I have, truly gained even more experience than I had originally?
now thinking back, 21 was, I mean, it was far, it was a while ago, but it wasn't, right? I mean, I guess it feels like forever ago, but then it doesn't. Um, but I'm thinking back to when I started. I started as just a basic VA. I had no experience in doing, remote work. I had experience as, with customer service and organization and typical, admin stuff. So I had some transferable skills, But everything that I know today, I've built since and learned since I started that business. And I actually have had multiple pivots,
Mm-hmm.
not realizing that that's actually what that was, right? Because I did try to focus on certain things, I guess what you would consider like a niche down or niche. Um, but I tried to focus on like social media management, but I was still a VA. And so I still had other things. And then I was an executive assistant, but an executive assistant is just a fancy word for another virtual assistant, right? You're still an assistant.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but so I had those little pivots where it was like, oh, I really like doing this. I really want to focus on that. Like at one point, I tried to pivot into Pinterest management,
Mm-hmm.
which I really enjoyed and I was really good at. But then I kept getting pulled back into this generalized virtual assistant thing, like you were saying, where it's like, oh, you need this. Oh, you need that. Oh, I know how to do this. I know how to do that. And sometimes it's the client pulling you back into that. And then sometimes it's just you reverting back into what's comfortable, right? Because you already know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but this most recent pivot, I think this one was kind of an unexpected aha moment that I had thrown up to me when we had a previous conversation, where I was talking about, I'm just getting, burnt out of all of this. And I feel like I'm doing so much more than, I'm giving myself credit for, really. Um, and then talking about it, and you're like, well, Jess, you're an OBM. Like that's what you are. And this whole time I've devalued myself because I didn't realize that I had gone from a VA to an OBM at some point, and I didn't adjust my business and um, my packages and my pricing and everything accordingly. So now it's more of a aha realization. And yes, it kind of was like it was onset. And then when you brought it to my attention that, hey, you're an OBM, like that's what you do, I'm like, oh my gosh, that this does define what I do. And it actually is something I enjoy doing. As of all of the things that I've done as a VA, being an OBM lights me up. And so I feel like because I went from that over overwhelmed burnout, I'm just done with this. I don't, I'm just going through the motions now, right? You kind of detach yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think at that point, when I felt that excitement again, I was like, okay, well, that's that's where we're going then, right? And I feel like you experienced this too, right?
I did. I just like you, I had quite a few transitions and pivots in my business. And even when we worked together, you could probably see some of the transitions that I had. Because starting out, I was doing $25 logos for my mom. She's a website designer, so I'm second generation website designer. And so I was just getting my feet wet. And she's like, "Oh, I've got clients," and throw it over to me. And then I started social media. I didn't do general VA though. Like I felt like there was a thing I wanted to do. I kind of wanted to stay in some kind of bucket, but I would still take on more. Like I would literally create an invoice. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I can do that," and I would like literally create a whole new invoice,
Mm-hmm.
like saying the thing and quote the client for that thing because I knew I was capable. And so I ended up with just still the same. It was as if it was like a VA, but not on my website, right? Like, oh, I can do social media. Oh, yeah, I can build your website. Or I can do your back end work for your Kajabi. Oh, I can train you on how to do the thing. Like, I can do a logo for you. Sure, I'll do your branding for you. And it was like, I never could pinpoint like a structure and a system that would fit what I was doing. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was difficult, but I just navigated it because, like we said, it was like, look, I'm getting booked, I'm booked and busy, so it's working. So I would just continue to do it. But then I started to realize, that one thing, like, remember when you said about being everything for everyone, like your clients, it's like your clients, what was that phrase that you called it?
It's being in the junk drawer. Like
Yeah.
everybody has that junk drawer. that you put everything in, you don't have a place for it, but it's just, oh, it's going to go there, and I feel like that's what we become known for, all the things that we can do, not necessarily what we are meant to do or want to do. But yeah, that's what we become, that junk drawer for our clients, unfortunately, in situations like that.
Yeah, and I think that it wasn't that, like I said, it wasn't that I hated the work. I actually loved all the moving pieces. I loved the idea of the design when I get into the design phase. I loved, building out the branding. That's like the fun part. It's like putting icing and decorating the cake. Like I enjoyed all the things, even the back end. Like people like, I can't understand this. I love tech, all things tech. I can do. It's a puzzle. I love putting puzzles together. I like it when it's difficult. I love to celebrate when I figured it out. Like I loved all of those different things. But like you said, it's that junk drawer. And that's when you start to realize that now clients are pulling on me to do certain things. And then I started to realize that I was getting underpaid, undervalued for what I was providing. So now I'm not just providing the service of building a website, I'm also telling you how to structure it on the back end and the front end and how it connects to other platforms. And I'm getting on calls with their teams and talking about how to set up the systems and how and doing audits. And it was everything. Like I would say, I'm a website designer, but I was doing everything else for free on top
Mm-hmm.
of just building the website. And I think that's where I started to get that drain of like, okay, now I'm realizing that I am not doing what I should be doing, and I'm also becoming very undervalued. Like there comes a point where that excitement in the beginning of like, oh, I've got all these different clients on books, to the point where it's sometimes I had to get to a point where I had to say no, where it was like, and that
Mm-hmm.
was hard. It was hard to say, you know what, I can't do that for you. And it's not about the money. It's about the fact that, I am putting all my time and energy into supporting you in this way. And now we're getting to a place where I'm being undervalued. And so, and it's like you had to take that step back and say, you know what, I can't do it anymore. It was difficult sending out those invoices and telling the client, like, look, this is what you're asking me for. This is the price. And being and it required an enormous amount of faith that God was going to allow me to still sustain, even though I'm telling these clients no, right? Because when you're building a business, you're like, yeah, like of course those calls are about like making sure that they're a good fit, you're a good fit, right? But then we're talking about, getting to a place where we're actually being the ones vetting more than we used to, right? Because when we were younger in our business, we were like taking on who we could get, and being a little bit lenient about who the client is. And then now we're getting to a place where it's like, okay, now I'm going to have to be more strategic about it. And that means that it's a possibility that income may reduce because of the choice that I'm making. And at that point, then we have to rely on God. Like we have to trust that He's going to sustain us when we're making this pivot.
Yeah, yeah. That's actually what, comes to mind is actually the book of Ruth in the Bible, where her story is pretty much the same thing that, we're finding, or that I've definitely found myself um, in this season in my business, is reduction in hours, losing clients, and then realizing, and honestly, kind of just losing the desire in what I was doing, and finding, that there's something more, there's, something else, something more, and knowing and having that faith. But um with Ruth's story, where she puts faith in the unknown. She's going off to the new land. She's following her mother-in-law, and, your God's my God. I'm going to follow you, and I'm going to have faith. And she ends up there, and not only ends up with a man coming in to, um, take care of her, but also God blesses her with a child after all that time of not being, not having a child, and a son of all that. So it's like, to relate that into my situation, or in both of our situations with this pivot, is that we're not very sure but we have to have faith that whatever is beyond, wherever we're going, is going to provide. God's going to be there to provide it. And we just have to have faith to follow where we're being led. And I feel like the day that you said, Jessica, you're an OBM. And I'm like, you know what? I am. And I've started the process of positioning myself as such. And with that and having that faith and being guided into that next step and accepting that, you know what, that's where I'm going. This is what I'm doing. I know that I have faith that it's going to all work out because I'm following where I'm being led instead of resisting it
Yeah.
because it's not comfortable. It's not my norm, right? Because it does require me to make a lot of adjustments from just being that collect all junk drawer VA to now being a high value, higher priced OBM with
Mhm.
a lot more responsibility in the end of it. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think when you bring up the story about Ruth, in the book of Ruth, you think about like how much it relates to in certain ways about when it comes to like hustle culture, how we tend to get ourselves burnt out and we're worn out, and we what is so beautiful about that story is that in the end, even though like even Naomi, she's just like, I like I'm worth nothing at this point. Why do you
Mm-hmm.
even want to bother being with me? Because I'm just like I am, like I have nothing for you. And I feel like sometimes we are like that when we have taken ourselves so far, like you said, in being that junk drawer where we're just like, look, I don't have anything left to give. Something has to give at this point, you
Right.
know. And we just get so burnt out. And then what's beautiful is that in that story, we're reminded of, like you said, about having who we should have our faith in. Sometimes we kind of push it aside, like, okay, well, faith's over here, but business is my business. It's like, no, everything that we do, like God is in, He gives us the ability, He gives us the talent and the inspiration and the drive, the desire to do this. And sometimes we forget, and I think it's so good that we are reminded to continue to have faith in him and knowing that he is a father. You know what I mean? He wants our good, and sometimes it is going to be a little difficult. Change is something that, especially now in the business s- space that we're in, it is nothing but change. And so we've got to
Mm-hmm.
pivot and move and do whatever is necessary, to navigate the world in the online business space. And so all the more that we need God who knows all and who can guide us through that. And with that, we have to have faith in him.
So I want to bounce off of that um, to ask you the, because I know that I've struggled with this. So with that transition, you're pivoting to something that is of more, strategy, and I'm pivoting to something that's more higher responsibility based. An OBM is an online business manager. You have a lot of responsibility in someone else's business. Um, and making a lot of decisions on how it operates and making sure that it does flow. um, with that comes higher pricing.
Yeah.
So like how have you kind of navigated on having that faith that it's okay to increase those prices, and are people really going to pay it?
Yeah. Yeah. That is, I think that's where I say the rubber hits the road, like of if you really got the faith for it, because a lot of times with the increase of price means that it's going to be less clients, which actually works out well. If you can remember back to that little calendar we had when we first got started, it was like, okay, you're gonna have this many clients, and then you got to make this, you have to charge this much, so that means you're gonna need 5 clients a month or 10 clients a month or whatever it is. It's going back there and starting to see the number of clients trickle down as you build up to how much more money that you want to make, with your projects, right? And then, but the thing that they don't tell you is that may mean a longer period of time going without. that might mean that you may get more no's, right? You'll be filtering out those people that are like, what they say, low, like that used to be low hanging fruit, the ones that you just kind of grab and get a job and you're good. You
Hmm.
are going to have to like really put that time and effort into really understanding that client and perfecting the things that you're learning. But when it comes to that price, but again, it is just a change of the price. And it does mean that you are going to have to be okay and be confident that that price is good, that it is a solid price. And of course, like looking at the market and seeing, okay, for what I'm offering, qualified, do I have all of the skills necessary? And okay, what is the going rate for this particular position? And if I am well within that, then it's a good price. The hard part comes in being confident enough to charge that price. And that happened to me quite a few times, really early in the business, when I made the transition into Kajabi, when I became a Kajabi. This is just before I became a Kajabi expert. It was like, oh, Kajabi? I was like, yeah. And I went back and I was studying and watching all the videos. And, I even got my own Kajabi account so that I can really understand all the things that had to do with Kajabi. And then, but what I was charging very low prices. And I had come to the realization that, okay, well, at this point, you're taking more of my time. Not only that, I can't charge you for these prices on an hourly basis. It's got to be project based. And I remember when I first did the numbers, and it was like over $1,000. I think it was almost 1,500 a month per month, not one time per month. It was like, I don't know, this had been like, I think it was about 2021, 2022. And it was hard. I'm talking, I had like anxiety about it. Like I was like trying to press that button to send. It was like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can do this. But surprisingly enough, see, the right people won't blink at your prices. And the reality is that's what we want. We want people that are
Right.
serious, that don't undervalue what you provide and is looking for what you have to offer, right? And and then it started to happen more frequently. More people as okay, like, okay, well, I'm gonna charge the price that I know that, it's a good deal. Sure
Hmm.
enough. Even some people are like, man, that's a lot, but you know what? I need it. This is going to help me. And I started to gain confidence as I started to move forward. And it turned out that it ended up working out. It actually did. So it was that leap of faith. It was that leap of faith. And I know for that one I had to make the transition with an existing client from what I was originally doing for him and then moving over. And I was like, there's just no way. There's no way he's going to pay for this. And I remember going in a group like, is this right? Like, should I do this? And they're like, yes. Why are you doing all of this for like pennies on the dollar? But it ultimately worked out. So I would say that the biggest hurdle is kind of wrapping our minds around the fact that we're going to have less clients. It's going to be more. And we may even find ourselves having more time even though we have more responsibility. And being okay with that and being confident to do that. I mean, had years of experience in going through these different things to build up and to study. It's more than just the physical thing you're providing. You're providing years of experience and know-how to a position, and we are qualified. And we deserve to charge the rate that is valued for the role that we're playing in
Yeah.
business.
That just made me, the whole time I'm sitting here thinking, when did I raise my rates? Girl, I have never raised my rates. I have never changed I have not experienced the life of sending that email and saying, "Hey, my rates have increased." Um, and now that I'm doing this transition, and pivoting into a much higher paying gig, or position, and um, I'm gonna have to have that faith. I'm gonna have to have the faith of being like, I'm no longer operating as this little, VA catch-all junk drawer.
Yeah.
We're now this big OBM taking on businesses and, building those operations for CEOs that need that help. And I know that there's plenty of people out there. But yeah, I just that realization just came to mind. I was like, I don't think I've ever
Oh,
actually raised my
I've changed my
rate.
rates so many times. I have not necessarily, well, changed my rates, but I was a like that junk drawer. I had so many different services. Honestly, I
Mhm.
had gotten into a process of quoting people different things because I wasn't hourly anymore. And I made that transition from hourly fairly early in my business. And so I think that that did help. Because I think, especially getting like for you getting into OBM, the hourly rate just doesn't work. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Because you're not doing hourly work, so salary will be better. So having that standard set amount for your services to be available, that also provides a lot of flexibility. So now you're not manning like, okay, well, I'm needed at this particular time, and you can work around your life, and that's what we signed up for anyway. That's what we signed up for anyway. Um,
Yeah.
and so I think, even though we still continue to work ourselves beyond whatever a 9 to 5 job could ever do because it's our own business, but that is important to recognize that transition out of salary, not doing salary anymore, and then also recognizing like you've been doing this. So it's not like you're
Hmm.
trying to, get one over on somebody. Like, no, like you've been doing the work. I can give you
Right.
an example as a project manager, program manager at a health and wellness company just before I went into going online. And I was a rep doing all project management work. And I was literally getting paid half the rate, the hourly rate of what is based on if you equated it hourly to a salary project manager position. Now the guy I was working under was like, yeah, she can do my work all day, right? And people were looking at me like I was
Right.
crazy. Like, why are you doing all of this stuff for this guy? Like, that's not your job. I'm not doing that. I'm going home, but I would just push to do it.
Right.
Later on, what ended up happening was that they gave me the project management position, even though I didn't technically educationally qualify for the position. And I got my income increased, it doubled, and people went to bat for me because I did more than what I was even required to do. So I find
Hmm.
that even in those instances, it is such a blessing to have been able to be in a position where you were able to flex and gain so much knowledge and understanding working on a role and have those years of experience to now when you can step into that role and be like, I am an OBM, you have years of experience to show for it. A lot of people don't even get that. People go and they study and they go, okay, well, I know how to do it, but you've been able to live it out. And even though you weren't able to get the amount that you wanted, ideally because of the position, you do walk away with so much more experience. So I think that even though sometimes it can be harder on us, we do want to take that win. That is definitely a win that we can take with us as we continue to push forward and elevate in our own careers, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So in my situation, I'm actually going, and I'm not necessarily raising rates as much as I am coming from a hourly package rate to a now like it's a package, like these are the
Hmm.
services that you get and this is the price you're going to pay, and it's not based off of hours broken down on the client side anyways. I mean, obviously, we have the integrity of pricing it based off of experience, how long it takes, this, that, and another. Um so I'm really excited to be able to, it's going to be a different, it's it's uncharted territory as far as like I've got the skills, right? Like you said, I've been working as an OBM all this time, and so I have to just continue to stay diligent to that and knowing and confident in I know what I'm doing. It's a
Hmm.
matter of having the confidence in that, building out and pricing those packages and being able to stand behind it. Because why would someone else be confident in my abilities if I'm not confident in that enough to show through my packages of saying this is what I'm worth?
Yeah.
You're going to pay for it to get what I have to give you, or you don't, right? And like you
Hmm.
said, it may be a waiting game, and you just have to, again, going back to Ruth, you have to have that faith and knowing that you're headed in the right direction and God will provide in the end. So yeah, an exciting, exciting adventure.
So I had another question. Like, did you kind of feel that your clients saw you differently before you did? Because I think like what I can see on multiple occasions of like how when that I started to do more for the client, it's like they start to pull a little bit more on you so that they could, do you think that your clients saw that and kind of took advantage of those qualities before you realized that that was that you even had those abilities, I would say.
I think that um, I don't know if I would really say as much as seeing me differently as much as just becoming comfortable in me being the yes ma'am, or the
Mm.
yes girl, should I say, not yes ma'am. But I and I think maybe that's, when we figure out that things are easily accessible, we take advantage of it, right? Not
Yeah.
necessarily in a wrong way or whatever. It's just, hey, it's at my disposal, and I can utilize that. And um I think that I definitely figured it all out after it.
Mhm.
I had been going round and round for a little while, and then realizing this is not what I signed up for. And like you said, we didn't start these businesses to replace a 9 to 5. Like, we started these businesses to, and don't get me wrong, we still work 24/7 because that's what we do as entrepreneurs. Because if we're not doing, we are thinking, right? I don't
Yep.
know how many notebooks and things I have, notes I have, like, just randomly, because I just have that, oh, but this and this and this. So looking back now, what would you tell someone that's currently in that messy middle stage?
I think the first thing that I would say would be to first pray. I would literally ask them first to pray, but pray for what specifically? For clarity in the business, like pray for guidance. Like Lord, what do you see that I'm not seeing? Where can I improve? Where did something change or shift and I didn't hear you tell me that I needed to make a shift, right? So that's what first thing that I would suggest. The next thing I would suggest would be to take some time to write down all of the things that you're currently doing. Write down all the things that you're currently doing. How are you spending your time? And are you finding that you are spending more time working, or are you finding that what you're doing is has nothing to do with the website that you have up, or you know what I mean, like the bio, like, oh, I'm this, and then you're finding like, wait a minute, contractually, that's another thing too. Looking at your contract, okay, I've been working with this client for years now. Am I doing the thing that they signed me for, or have I pivoted and shifted out of that category? That would be the place to definitely start, because then that will open up your eyes to see, okay, well, maybe there is some things that need to be adjusted and actually make that adjustment. Okay, either revert back to what you are known to do if that's your happy place, right? Meaning like that's where you feel called and led to do, or look to see what is the market looking like with what you are actually doing and make that pivot to do that thing and get more clients in that space, and make sure that you definitely increase your prices, because prices should definitely be increased at least a little bit each year. So that would definitely be something that I would tell, and I would the advice I probably would have given myself.
Yeah.
What about you? Is there something that you would tell anyone that is has dealing with what you've experienced? I mean, where you are at now, like, is there anything that you could give them some advice on how to deal with this messy space?
Yeah, so I think my biggest advice would be, don't ignore it. If it doesn't feel right, like, then you're not meant to be where you're at if it's not feeling right. And I think our natural reaction to feeling burnt out. And sometimes it's not even being burnt out. I mean, that's just what we associate it with because it just doesn't feel right. But it's not always being burnt out, gonna just burn it all down and, this isn't for me and go back to the old way or whatever, Um, no, knowing and trusting that there's a reason you're feeling the way you're feeling. And sometimes it's not a burnt out thing, it's a no longer aligned thing. And so yeah, I think listening to it and then having the confidence and faith in moving, like, and knowing that as long as you listen to that, there's a reason why you're being pulled. And sometimes you just have to have that leap of faith and follow it.
Well, that wraps it up for our very first episode of the Behind the Business Unfiltered podcast. Are you in the middle of a pivot in your business? Let's continue the conversation down in the comments. We'll see you in the next episode.